Changes every time.
That was a new cue for me. I need to know to pay attention to my visual cues as well as my audio cues. Thank you,
And they
Sam.
start getting really subtle, and I'm just going to leave you hanging.
That was not as subtle.
Not that time. No,
No.
I didn't mean that
Oh,
time.
Katniss is ready for the show.
She knows. She knows when it's time to start.
She does. She just scratched the heck out of me. So hi, here she is.
Oh,
Yep,
there she
right
is.
on cue. Kind of say hi
I
to
remember
everybody.
the first interview where she came on screen, and it was like the biggest deal ever. And now it's just like, if she doesn't come on screen, what's wrong?
We're worried about her. I know. All right. So hello, everybody. Happy Martin Luther King Jr. weekend. I've been watching lots of great things, interviews and documentaries. It's been a really lovely weekend because we're coming off of a hard time in our country. But I want to focus on the things we're celebrating, which is in theater. And also in 3 days, we have the inauguration of the first ever African-American and Asian woman vice president. I'm so excited. I am so excited. I don't even have words. I just get really like, I don't even know what to do. It's very exciting. So this is a really great time. Hello, Melody, who's watching us. I see she's logged on and commented. So this is a great time. And we have very special guests. So I want to get through our announcements. We've got some good announcements coming up. So Suzanne Matai's class has started. But this is improv for all, not just for kids anymore. It's for adults too. But I'm sure if you go online at parks.lacounty.gov/winter20, you can probably sneak in there because they've just had one class. So don't miss out. She's a lovely person. I'm sure this will be a fun class. I'm going to have to get on that and take that improv class, actually. Also, don't forget to order Grace Rector's book, The Rector Girls, in honor of our dear sweet friend Pam, who is a member of the theater and supported our Kentwood kids and amazing things. And she did amazing things in life. And so this is great advice that she gave to her daughter and to all of us. And also Alice Lunsford's book. Don't forget to pick up this, The Mystery Strawberries You Can't Peel. It's a great title. So yay. So that's what's going on with our members. We've got a couple more announcements, which will come up. Sam's got an announcement for us, and we've got an announcement from one of our special guests, which is very exciting.
Have an announcement. I have a few. One is about me. Like I said last week, I'm in a production of Guys and Dolls concert version that is done completely virtually and COVID safe. But it's not just a concert version where we sit there and we sing Luck Be a Lady. We are doing full choreography and blocking and all that, partially live, partially pre-recorded. So it's this whole multimedia thing. It's going to be really fun. So I'm excited for everybody to see it.
It's a hybrid.
Yeah, it's a hybrid. So I said last week it's going to be on January 30th. It's now going to be on February 13th. So if you have a little Valentine's date, a little early Valentine's date, I would suggest you come. So tickets are free, and it is the inaugural musical of Boxcar Theatricals, so they would really appreciate a donation to help celebrate. So I will get a ticket link for all of you soon, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, I'm excited. That sounds like a fun Valentine's Day experience.
I'm really excited. So next, not me, but there's, as usual, the virtual theater series is still going very strong, very successful here at the Kentwood Players. This is the last week that you have to watch Together Apart, written by Cassidy Pepp, directed by George Condrick, and starring Jenny Boone, Stanley Brown, and Grace McLaughlin. So if you have not watched it yet, make sure you watch it because you only have a week left. Sunday, it's gone forever, which I'm not sure if that's true, but it's gone forever. In its place will be 3 Syllables of Shame.
I'm so excited. 3 Syllables of Shame.
And directed by Catherine Rom and starring Jeremy and Lindsay Palmer. If you want to get a little sneak preview of it, We will be showing it at the membership meeting this Wednesday. So it's the normal monthly membership meeting, free, open to all. So if you'd like a little preview, head on down to our membership meeting, or virtual membership meeting, and watch it.
Come check us out. And if you don't have the link for a virtual membership meeting, email marketing@kentwoodplayers.org, or you can also email vp@kentwoodplayers.org, and Kathy Dershmer will send you the link, or I will send you the link. So you can check us out and join us. We're fun members.
We would love to see you. We love having more people. Next, after 3 Syllables of Shame, is going to be Surf's Up by Ken
Levine.
I said it right.
Yes,
Ken Levine, and directed by Allison Bull. Can I announce the cast yet?
Sure.
Okay, the cast is Chris Morrison and Glory Bamubile Tshimanga. I think I got that right. I've never actually said her name out loud. But really excited to see some great work from them. We'll get you some more information once that comes up in February. And then rounding out our season is going to be State of Independence, written by Paul Koster and directed by Susan Weisbarth, which is going to be March through April. We are holding auditions for this. Actually, this coming Saturday, January 23rd from 12 to 4, and Sunday, January 24th from 7 to 9. So if you'd like to audition, email weisbarthsusan@gmail.com, and you can also ask her for more information about the roles and about script and all that sort of fun stuff. So if you'd like to audition, we'd love to have you.
And I will say, if anybody ever has questions about anything we ever announce on here, or you want something announced, always email marketing@kentwoodplayers.org. We'll get back to you. We'll give you all the info we can.
Yeah. So who do we have on today?
I'm really excited about this because I've been wanting to have, we're going to have our full DEI committee on at some point coming up. But my wonderful and amazing co-chair, Glory Bamubile Tshimanga, is here to join us. And also we have the man who is on every committee and who is a huge supporter of Kentwood Players and just a joy to be around, and is also on our marketing committee, as well as Glory and you and me, is Daniel Kruger. Yay!
Hello!
Hi, Daniel. Hi, Glory.
Hi there.
Thank you both for joining us.
Of course, yeah.
This means a lot to me. Thank you to all of us. Yay. And it's a very...
What does your shirt say?
It says, don't judge me by my sweatshirt. I'm just comfy in my home.
I love
A
it.
little something on.
I love that you look stunning and you're like, oh, I'm just comfy in my home. I'm BJ.
In your jammies.
Yeah.
What? Oh my gosh. Yay. So we are having you on in a very special weekend in honor of Martin Luther King Jr. I don't know how you all have been celebrating. I would love to hear. I have been watching so many movies and interviews. I don't think I left my couch yesterday except to get food and go to the little girl's room. And I'm so sorry, y'all. This is every week. Okay.
Madness needs her own show.
Oh my gosh. Okay, thanks, honey. Love you too. So do you all have any special plans, or is there anything that you like to do for this weekend? Or I know we can't go to the parades that normally happen.
Right. I mean, something like watching movies and reading and all that kind of stuff is, for me, I'm in theater and I'm a film person, so I feel like I can connect to these kinds of conversations and issues and topics the best through movies. So I typically like to watch, these kind of inspiring movies or movies that handle these topics about civil rights. So just makes me feel like I'm in the moment and aware, making myself more aware of what's happening.
Well, I got the privilege of working. Oh, sorry. My nephew had a homework. Yeah. My nephew had a homework assignment where he had to actually write information about Martin Luther King's I Had a Dream speech. So I actually was able to work with him on that. And it was very specific. And what surprised and didn't surprise me was how much kids really don't know about that speech or why it was so important. They all have heard the term, I have a dream. And that's all they know. And this was and so I didn't just help him with the homework. We talked about it. What did it mean? Going through it. To his chagrin, we read the entire speech so that he got to see it and hear it. And we, to answer the certain questions for the homework, it was very much about like, I would pull up passages and have him. So why is him talking about having a dream that a man can be, I can own a home in Texas and in Tennessee, so important. And at the very end, what was really great is I said, what does this whole speech mean? And he said, well, basically, he just says he wants the American dream to own a home with a white picket fence like everyone else. I was like, there you go. Mm-hmm. It's something so powerful is really so simple. We all just want to be treated equally. And I do know that he ended up taking some of it because I questioned him the next day and he was able to answer questions.
Oh. That is the big test with children. That's an important test. If they're just answering it within 30 minutes, maybe it didn't sink in. So, good test. The next day,
said, when was it? And he went, 1963. I was like, there we go.
Glory, what were you gonna say?
Just recently watched an interview of VP Kamala Harris and her husband just talking about like their love and their life. And it was like, it's just really refreshing to have a couple in the White House that doesn't seem like they hate each other again. Yeah. Like, I know that 4 years seems like a small time, but it's funny when you're watching like Biden speak or Kamala speak, you're like, oh, it really has been a while since like we've seen competent people in power. Like, it's one almost kind of weird, but also like refreshing. And she was just talking about they met on a blind date, and her friend told her not to Google her husband or her now husband, and she did. And it was just a really funny thing because he didn't know that. But it was really just nice to see, two happy people in love,
I love that. Wait, her friend advised her to Google or not to Google?
Not to
okay,
Google.
Okay.
She did anyway. Yeah.
She's like, excuse me.
I would too. I'd be like...
Yeah, you have to. This day and age.
You tell somebody not to Google a person that you're going on a date with, and you're gonna just take their word for it and be like, "Oh yeah, I'll go on this. I'll just trust you, and just whatever skeletons are in their closet, I'll take it." But
look, we don't have time to waste. This day and age, I'm like, Google, just get the basic information, weed it out. Anyway, I'm glad that they are so cute, and I love them so much, and I'm so happy for her.
Yeah.
I am. She has worked so hard and is just an amazing human being. And I've been a big fan of hers as a person and as a leader in government for a long time now. And I appreciate the evolution of learning and growing in her policies as well. I trust people who evolve. And don't just stick and say, we've been doing this for 50 years. Yeah, well,
it's always worked like this. Why can't we keep doing it?
Yeah. So very exciting. I also wanted to say, while we're talking about things to do this weekend, I forgot to announce this in the first little announcement part. But Center Theater Group is airing for free. They're starting a new series called Not a Moment, but a Movement. And they're premiering Crownation. I hope I'm saying that where you can understand what I'm saying, because it's not a real word. And so they're premiering it tomorrow for free. Normally it will not be free. So if you want to see it for free, tomorrow at 6 p.m. Pacific time, they are premiering it, and you can go onto the Center Theater Group website. And for those people that are not in Los Angeles, because I know people watching from my side might be from anywhere in the United States or world, if it's Center Theater Group Los Angeles, and you'll be able to watch this. And this is Angelica Sherry's one-person play, and it's paired with visual art of Kenyatta A.C. Hinkle and the music of Jessica Laurel. And it says in a unique event that amplifies all three artists. So I'm really excited to see the merging of the play, the visual art, and the music, and how that is working. Also virtually, because we're not going to be in the theater. So this is going to be really interesting. And then also they're doing a pre-show panel discussion moderated by Erin Michelle Washington. And that is also tomorrow at 4 p.m. So I always, back in Tulsa where I grew up, we always do there's usually a parade and then like a big event outdoors. And we always did that. And then there's stuff here in Los Angeles. So I'm like, I don't know what to do tomorrow because we're just sitting at home. So this will be a nice virtual, safe, COVID-free thing to do, to watch in your home. So
for that suggestion, Samantha.
yes. Oh, you're welcome. I'm really excited about it. I will be joining the panel, not on the panel. I will be watching the panel and watching the production.
Like, oh wow, okay.
No. So that is something really exciting to do. And so speaking of theater and the power of theater, this obviously is going to be pretty powerful. I wanted to bring you both on and for us to talk about how we use theater and how we can use theater to affect change in our society. I know I just watched, which came out today, Ava DuVernay's production of One Night in Miami. And I was watching it. So at first it starts out, I'm like, okay, this is a movie and I'm watching it. But when it gets into the heart of the film, I was like, this would make an amazing play. Immediately looked it up. It's a play. Stand to reason. I didn't know of this play, I'm sad to say. But it was not surprising to me because so much has come out of theater that has been transformative. So I was wondering, from you all, different experiences or different ways you think we can use our theatrical voice.
Just telling the stories.
Say that one more time, Lauren.
Telling the right stories. Or even if the story doesn't tell a story of racism or discrimination, anything like that, but even having people in those casts who look diverse, who are diverse, also really just sends a really big message to everyone. I mean, for example, Hamilton is a show that isn't really about, people's culture or anything like that, but that show has changed the game, even in legislation, like in 2015, Alexander Hamilton was going to be taken off a $10 bill, but because of the show's popularity and people going crazy about it, they were like, no, we're going to keep it. And I know it's a small example, but just telling the right stories or having the right people tell stories can make a really huge difference.
I saw The Trip to Bountiful when I was at the Amundsen, which again isn't at all about racism, but what was so amazing, the reality is a good majority of the participants who are coming to see the show are going to be probably more of wealth, and they're probably going to be Caucasian as well. But seeing that story and watching Cicely Tyson and seeing the performances, I completely forgot that I was watching a story that is about an African-American family. It was just a family. It's a family who's going through issues and troubles, and the desire of the mother to be able to go back home one more time before she passes on. And it becomes that quick moment where everything blurs and you walk away. And I thought, because it wasn't about race, it wasn't on that, it just became a great show. And it is as simple as that, casting people of color in just regular roles that aren't about some type of discrimination or anything on a specific movement. It can just really, I think, help blend this, where we no longer, they talk colorblind in castings. If we do that more often, it wouldn't be like, oh, that's unusual. that they happen to have Glory will have this coming up, a Caucasian father and African American daughter. It's not, you won't think anything of that. But we need to do it more often for that to be something that we stop looking at and just say, it's a father and a daughter.
Yeah, absolutely.
I absolutely agree. And I was actually going to say almost exactly that. But to me, I think representing minorities in places where they aren't always given that representation is one of the most important things that we can use in the arts to make people feel like their voices are being heard. To me, coming from like a movie perspective, like this is just an example, but when you see like Star Wars, the original ones is most of the leads, if not all of them, depending on how you divvy it up, but they're all white. And then when you have the new ones that come out and you have a female lead, a black lead, a Latino lead, an Asian lead, and all of, everything, it lets those people know that they can do something like that too. Not only go in space and fight evil people, but also be in general in positions of power and have healthy relationships with people and have good friendships and all of this stuff that in the past that wasn't even really said before.
Right.
It was only it was only relegated to white people could only have healthy relationships, whereas any like person of color had to have like we're poor, like these are the stories that everybody's telling, we're struggling, this, that, and the other, where as I think now I would hope that we see a push towards more uplifting stories about people of color and minorities and women and people with disabilities and stuff like that. So that's what I would like to see going forward, that how we can voice in theater and film and TV.
And in that sense, like with Star Wars becomes my story too. It a lot of people don't get it, but just representation is just so ridiculously important. I'm a Disney fanatic, for those who don't know, and I used to live in Florida. And I like to meet characters, and I met Elena of Avalor. For those who don't know who she is, she's a Disney Junior character, and she has a TV show. So Elena of Avalor is Hispanic, and usually when I go meet princesses, everyone's speaking English. So I remember seeing this family, and this little girl didn't speak a lick of English, but she went up to Elena of Avalor and started speaking in Spanish, and she was just like, yeah, we can talk like this. And it was one of the most incredible things that I've ever seen. I'm like, that is important. It's important that this child knows she can talk to this character in her language, how she wants to, how she feels more comfortable. And it's just, representation is so important. So important.
I'm crying right now.
It's a beautiful day. I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. I don't even need to meet her. This is my day of Disney. That's it. I did it.
That was amazing. I had a somewhat of a similar experience when I was at Disney. This is more of a strength experience, but I saw all these little girls walking around as princesses, which I love. I'm a princess as well. But then I saw this one girl dressed as a Jedi, and I'm also a Jedi. And I was like, yes, ma'am. And when they do their Jedi training, it's a lot of little boys. And there was this little girl dressed like in her little Padawan braid and everything. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. Yeah, they brought her up and she was incredible. And she took it very seriously. It was so cute.
Right. I mean, that's why when you have a character like Rey, and she's like probably the biggest pop culture character of the last 5 years outside of like Marvel, it's a big deal because now girls can look at that and be like, oh, it's not just for boys. I can do that too and not feel like I'm an outsider or anything. It's normal.
And right now we're talking about something that I really appreciate because we're talking the world of Star Wars or superheroes, things like that, which is something that is fantastic. It's heightened. It's above our world. And what that does is it subconsciously gives us strength, right? It's something that, as we're talking about and tech, like it's reaching our creative juices and making us think outside the box, even about ourselves, which is, I think, kind of sly because it's not coming at us saying, you can be a princess too. It's just by
it is
example.
what it is.
Yeah. And I wanted to share one piece that has stuck with me for years. I know most everyone's going to be like, this came out before you were born in 1992, and you're right. But Anna Devere Smith did she's done lots of one, but she did two that especially stuck with me. And I want to make sure and get the names completely right. The one was called Twilight Los Angeles, 1992, which was about the LA riots. And then the other, which I did pieces from, was from Fires in the Mirror, which is about the Crown Heights riot in New York, in Brooklyn, New York. I had never heard about the Crown Heights riot.
Not heard of that riot either.
You have not or had not?
Mm-mm.
This is the first you're hearing about it. Let me recommend to you watching this show. I'm sure you can get a copy of it. For anybody watching, it's Fires in the Mirror. Anna Devere Smith does it's one woman. She does every role. Male, female, young, old, multiple ethnicities, white, black, Latino. Hi, Candace. Yes, I see. I love you. She's a very sharp boss. And she does all of them amazingly. And it's filmed, but she also did this in live theater. I did not get the opportunity to see it live. And what was so incredible to me about her use of this is she took people, real people from these events and told their story in a monologue form. And watching this type of theater, I have since seen other people do these monologues, and being in the live and being in the room and seeing and hearing and feeling. And one of the things that it struck me was that it reminds us all that these are people. When these things happen to people, they are people just like us. And I think sometimes we forget when an event happens because it's on such a global scale, and we're talking about we talk about something grand in the thousands, and we're forgetting, even when we talk about Martin Luther King. And Reverend Al today on his show had Martin Luther King III on. And one of the things Reverend Al was talking about was, we all know the speeches. We all know the public figure, but we don't often think about the man, the husband, the mom, the dad, the kids that were going through the events that they were going through, that had their houses set on fire, had the harassment, right? And so as Reverend Al's talking about that, I'm registering. I've got empathy. I'm like, oh gosh, to think about, here's this son who is a child living through that fear. But to see that portrayed in theater is so powerful. To watch somebody have those feelings and have that experience has really struck with me about how we can reach people through our voices. Those are a couple examples that really struck out to me. And then also doing one, I did one of her monologues for a show, and it was very moving and life-changing, doing the research of what, at the time I had not lived in New York, so I was researching New York, researching what the neighborhoods were between in Crown Heights and what they were dealing with. And it was really eye-opening as a performer as well. So have you all are there pieces that speak to you in that kind of way that bring about humanity or that you've seen or participated in?
Well, I'll say I was lucky enough with Kentwood to be able to be in A Raisin in the Sun, which truly to this day, it's when we performed it, you could have almost made it still contemporary, because what goes on in that show still happens, and it almost at this point should be something that we would be watching and going, wow, did that really used to happen that way? And it still does, where the idea of a family wanting to move into a more affluent and white neighborhood creates issues, and we know that still can happen anywhere. I had some friends who were moving into a predominantly white neighborhood, and they talked about everyone was so nice, but there was sometimes an undertone with the niceness of some of the neighbors. And over time, a few of the neighbors moved. And they were told, they're like, well, they're afraid that the neighborhood's going to start going down now. So, yeah, I mean, theater, doing A Raise in the Sun was wonderful, because I'm hoping it opens people's eyes and they can watch that and think, oh crap, if that ever happens in my neighborhood, I want to be on the right side of history instead of the wrong side. I want to say, yes, welcome, come. We do want you here, and show the love, and not be my character, Carl Lindner, which is, we will help you find another home elsewhere.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I've grown up in predominantly white neighborhoods my whole life until I moved to LA, just because my mom was very that's kind of the same reason as I don't want my child to be around this. Or children, with my brother. But it's a very real thing when you feel kind of ostracized, even though they're being really, really nice to you. But you can feel that they're like, we'll see if I need to leave. We'll see how they conduct themselves. I mean, even as a kid or a preteen, it's kind of obvious. But yeah, it still happens today all the time. People adopted kids trying to get into their home. People call the cops on them, and one's getting shot trying to get into their own home. Yeah, it happens. It happens all the time. And it's very prevalent still.
And Daniel, what year does Raisin in the Sun take place?
19 early 50s, 53, 54, I think.
Right, because
over 50, 60 years later.
Yeah, I was just about to say, here we are 60, 70 years later, and here we are with Glory having the same conversation about her real life experience.
But where it's so important for theaters to do productions, as Glory said, of having the people of color or any things like that, because that's how people are going to change their minds. That's how they're going to be open. If we do a Shakespeare show, I know that people say, well, traditionally the cast would have been all white. Well, let's not worry about traditionally. Let's cast the right people. I've seen some wonderful productions of Romeo and Juliet where they do mixed casting, and it's on purpose, because it's to create what is that divide. And in a weird way, it's more powerful to me than that pretty young girl and the handsome young man. It becomes about race, and one of them was was religion, where they were using Jewish and Christianity and things. So when you do that, I think audience members are going to be more open, and it is going to help. If you don't have I grew up in a predominantly white city, where my friends, a good majority of them, were not. And I was always surprised when they would tell me the stories of how, I was driving to your place and the cops followed me all the way.
Oh, wow.
Because that's unusual for me, because I've never had that happen. Mm-hmm. But I think if they can see it on the stage, see it in their television, in their movies, it removes that fear. Just because it's an African-American woman driving in a predominantly white neighborhood, we shouldn't think, she's probably up to no good. It's just because, it's a person driving. But we got to get more and more of that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what else I thought was interesting, and we've brought this up on the show quite a few times, but was when we did Daddy's Dying, Who's Got the Will? And we cast Daniel, your wife. We cast you. Well, first of all, let's even go here. You and I were brother and sister. So
Yep.
First of all,
You look alike.
first of all, let's go here. Second of all, your wife is Sharinda, who's been on the show, and she is a Black woman. And what's interesting is the show's not written that way. It's not written anyway. It doesn't. Dell does not specify the ethnicity or race of any of the characters. It does take place in Texas. It does. There are some stories that are told that allude to. You can guess. There's some racial tension there in the story itself. But it's not written that way. And what I find interesting is that when we cast it, things came up that would not have come up if it had not been cast as an interracial couple. All of the sudden, your fights had a different feel to them.
Mm-hmm.
And people reacted very differently to it because I had people, of course, oh, you're a shitty husband. I'm glad she dumped you. Good riddance. You deserved what you got. I was prepared for that, but as some of them would say, your character were a racist, right? And I had to try to defend and say, well, I married a Black woman, so I don't think he is maybe the same racist as you think. But yeah, it opened up a whole new dialogue.
It did.
Doing colorblind casting.
It did because, well, and I have to say, I feel like it was not necessarily colorblind, but color conscious, because Kirk took that into consideration, and also we made decisions knowing that this was an interracial couple. We made decisions accordingly based on how we did it. But what was interesting is I feel like so many times, and I'm having this conversation, I literally had this conversation 2 days ago on Friday with a friend of mine. And I can't tell you how many times, I feel like I need to buy about 700 copies of How to Be an Anti-Racist so I can just mail them out every time I have this conversation. But racism is not just lynchings and the N-word.
Right.
And what came up during Daddy's dying was that other kind of white supremacy that we don't talk about, that we're now starting to talk about, thank heavens, because of it became conversation in the mainstream in 2020, thank goodness, which is that white supremacy of I am above, I'm not saying I because I'm Hispanic, but that white, the white race is above other races. And that came out because in Daddy's dying, because he is such a crappy husband. And normally it would be his white wife and he would just be bossing around and just be a crappy, abusive husband. But in this, it was like, and it created a different conversation, which I thought was much needed.
And I think it's so important across the board. I have had the strangely enough, the pleasure to play Nazis, a racist, a abusive husband. I played a rapist. The portions of when you get to delve into their mindset, I actually can, in a strange way, understand why they're so corrupted, because they don't see other people. They only focus on themselves. Their life is, they can't say, oh, well, that's just a person, or that's a woman, or anything else. It's about them. And so when I had to look into these characters and be able to relate and understand them, if I want to portray them correctly, it opens up your eyes of, it's weird, it's terrible to say, they are ignorant and they don't know how to be sympathetic and empathetic to others. Their only concern is themselves, and they're afraid. They are so terrified that someone else is going to get a little piece of whatever they think they have.
Mm-hmm. Well, they never see themselves as the bad guy, and they're never going to see themselves as the bad guy unless some kind of intervention happens. So I have not really a question, but just want to open the discussion to. We have talked a lot about casting and the actors, but I think a equally large portion of this is the backstage and behind the scenes work of having people of color in directing positions and writing positions and stage managing and this, that, and the other. Because you can have a production of Raisin in the Sun, but are you going to get all the nuances and all the subtleties and all the layers if you don't have a Black director that's there to show that? You know what I mean? So I would like to start that discussion.
It's so important to have people of color in the background as well. Just especially with writing and directing, because they see things the way that other people of color do. So even how they write it and the meaning behind it is completely different when a Black person writes a Black story or a Black person is directing a Black story. And also, it's really weird being the only Black person in tech. It's really weird. It happened to me all the time in high school. Like just doing, I've done props before. I've done a lot of running crew, and I'm usually always like the only Black person or one of the two. And we need more of us. I know more of us want to be in these things, but I feel like we're not being seen, or no one's really reaching out to us, you know? But yeah, it's so important to have Black directors or people of color directors and people of color writers, because no one can share our stories better than us, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's how yeah.
Gloria, you bring up a really interesting point about reaching out and bringing people in. And I know you and I are working. You're the co-chair of the diversity committee and are heading that up, which I'm really excited about. What are some of the things that people can do to reach out, to broaden the pool and bring in BIPOC persons?
What I think is being specific in who you're calling can also kind of help a lot with that. There's something about it just kind of being vague and open, like when you're trying to talk to like director even in casting. It's different when that thing says, I specifically want an African American person, I specifically want a Hispanic person. And then, at least for me, when I'm looking at things, I'm like, oh, this is catered to me. They want someone like me for this. And it gives less of the pressure of like, I'm going up against all of these white people in a world and in a system that is white is the default. So I guess it makes it a little less discouraging if you're very specific who you want for something.
And I guess that works the same way when we're talking designers and directors. And I think we fall back on this feeling of like, I'm going to put out the announcement and whoever shows up is who we're going to go with. But I think that it's so funny that you say this, because I directed my first short film, which has not been released yet, but it's Ophelia. And I had the Ophelia. She was my partner. She's my business partner, my co-producer. And I wanted a Black Hamlet. And she wanted a Black Hamlet. We did not specifically write that. This was years ago. So we did not specifically write that in the description. But we wrote open to all ethnicities. We really want diverse casting, that spiel. In hopes that we would receive an influx of people of color and I would get to choose whoever I wanted. And we were looking through everybody and I was like, why are we've got like 3 people of color. And I specifically, like, I knew going in that I was going to cast a person of color as Hamlet.
Right.
So I'm going.
So in your case, just write it in the description.
Right.
It really does do something for people of color when they see the description you're specifically looking for African American, Hispanic. It makes me go, oh, I should definitely audition.
Right. As opposed to something ambiguous.
Yeah, and immediately goes, I this is important. I need to compliment. This is important.
Yeah. And I think that's interesting, Sam, I totally see that. I was just going to say, I think that's really interesting because right now that's where we are. And one day we'll get to a point, as Daniel was speaking earlier, where it doesn't matter. And when we put something ambiguous out there, everybody's just putting it in there because that's the norm. But right now that's not where we are. And we have to acknowledge where we are and go from where we are. Sam, you wanted to weigh in?
Yeah, it's not really me who has a question. It's a viewer who has a question. I would like any of you, including Samantha, to answer this. But I think it is about bringing people in who we need to see this. But this is from a different point of view.
I know where you're going. Are you reading Mario?
From an audience point of view. So Mario Rocha said, seeing Until the Flood at the Kirk Douglas was a powerful evening of theater.
Hold on. Let me just separate that really quickly so we get the title of this. Until the Flood is the title.
Until the Flood at the Kirk Douglas Theater was a powerful evening of theater as a series of first-person monologues. It was urgent and enlightening. The problem was that most of the audience, I presume, was already in agreement with the overall sense of empathy and understanding. That challenge is, how do you get a member of the Proud Boys to see it? So how are you going to get people who aren't required to come see these stories because they're the ones who need to see them the most?
And as much as I don't want to sit in a show with the group of Proud Boys, and I would be afraid for my life the entire time, I do think they need to.
I think you just used that as just a very extreme example.
I agree with you, but that's what we're talking about, right? Anybody in that frame of mind.
It's still out.
Well, it would be generations later, but I'll tell you, and again, maybe it's because where my upbringing was, the schools actually would take us to go see shows. So we went and saw ballets, we saw plays, and not a high school production. We went down to, the Pantages or the Almason, the Schuberts. So our school would take us there. In a strange way, I think if we could start programs again with that, the children of these people, when they see it, their parents are raising them to have the same values that they have. But if they see something, it strikes them. There's the one girl who turned in her mother, who was part of the Capitol assault, who had been kicked out earlier by her because she came out as a lesbian, and she turned in her mother. And she says, I have no qualms for what I did.
My favorite story.
I'm sorry, just the
I don't know about
that
this.
Is amazing. I love it.
I can't wait to read
this. What it created was she had her own way of thinking. So even though her mother may have wanted to raise her one way, she became her own person. Mm-hmm. The Proud Boys and things like that, these people, depending on their age, doesn't mean they can't change. It will be harder to get them. But if there's a way that we can start with the next generation, get them seeing this, remove it. They're watching the Star Wars episodes. They're watching The Lion King perform live with these actors. It could end up just, they may become a better generation than the ones that we currently have.
Yeah. Glory.
All honesty, it is education. That is where it starts, and that is where we will see change in a mass of people, is education. There is a reason why we see in red states more people like that. It's because education sucks. And I know because I went to school in Florida.
And I went to school in Louisiana. So.
It literally, you get empathy with education. The more you learn about what people have gone through in the past in its true form, you become empathetic. So really, I personally believe we fix the school system and we could see a lot of change for generations to come. And also social media is doing a really, really great job of informing people what's really, really happening, what's actually true. Unless you echo chamber yourself, and that's different. But it can do a really good job of educating. And I think with education, we'll see a lot of these issues kind of go to the wayside as a big majority. There'll still be racist people, unfortunately, but the majority will change with enough education. I really believe it.
I have to concur with you, Glory, and I think that's exactly what you're saying too, Daniel. I think we're spot on. We're seeing a lot of growth with younger people, and I remember, even not too long ago. Right now, we have a younger generation that is just light years ahead of where I was when I was growing up. Not where I was specifically, but where the environment I grew up in, that are accepting of different sexual preferences and identities. Mm-hmm. That would, if somebody had come, people, when I was young, kids were making fun of transgender people. At the time, we said transvestite because it wasn't even operational. I know some people were, but this was what people were making jokes about it. And it's heartbreaking to think about the experience of a person that is dealing with that being made fun of. And now you've got a whole group of the younger generation because they've been educated, and a lot through art, through television, through film, through theater, and then through each other. And you've had an environment that where people can see, just like Laura, you were saying earlier, where they can see themselves and say, oh my gosh, that's me. And I identify with that. And that's okay. So then they are themselves at school or out with friends or whatever. And so then that becomes normalized for those friends. And so then it becomes, okay, yeah, this is my friend who was assigned male at birth, but is really female. And we call them they. And their parents are like, what? And they're like, it's how it is. Deal with that. That's what we're seeing now. And that's what I think you both are exactly right, is where we're going to have to continue to move forward with the young people, which makes me feel better that I don't have to start asking Proud Boys out on dates to the theater. So that's good.
We should be teaching, transgender and gay history in public school. Even if it's for a small section of a textbook or whatever, it to start off with, because I know some people would definitely fight tooth and nail against it. But that's how it starts. It really, really is education. With the more knowledge you have, the more empathy you gain, the more curious you are as well, because learning at that point becomes somewhat enjoyable. But it really is education.
Yeah. I really like what you said too, Daniel, about bringing young people in schools, bringing them in to see this theater that we're watching. And look, we all know that people have, how do I say this? We are seeing cult behavior being expressed around what's going on. And we know it is very difficult to rescue somebody from that kind of mindset. But I do feel like part of that happens with theater. And I know this sounds weird, but just sit with me for a second. And that is because within the theater, we're teaching empathy and we are showing somebody else's life. And when you're seeing that and feeling that energy in that moment, it taps into a part of ourselves that is beneath the conscious brain. And I feel like it works as an earworm in there, keeps us thinking. And then the next time we hear somebody say something bullying or mean or threatening to somebody else, that's in our brain. And we're like, hold on, and that will help. Gloria, I feel like you were about to say something and I might have cut you off.
No, it's okay. It's just that topic of just media and that little earworm. There was a Facebook video that I saw this little girl who's blind. She got a copy of Harry Potter in Braille, and this girl was ecstatic. And then it just made me go, "Oh, we need more of this. This hasn't happened before. We need more books in Braille. We need to make these more accessible to people." It immediately made me go, "We need more of this." So to your example, just that little inkling, little earworm that I want more kids and adults who cannot see be able to enjoy any book like the rest of us can in Braille. That's what I want. That little girl made me so happy today, seeing her just come alive because she got a Harry Potter book in Braille.
I love
And
that.
with theaters, something I would love to see is more theaters creating a pay what you can day or weekend,
Yes.
because that can be also one of the biggest restraints. I worked with it. Yeah, I had a children's theater group that I was working with, and they would actually bring in kids from the Boys and Girls Clubs from around this area who paid nothing. So we out of our own money as the theater would pay for their buses for them to come in. Their tickets were comped.
Wow.
We also gave them lunch, and we got to meet the casts and have their programs, and the cast would sign it. And a lot of those kids who were coming from, some underprivileged areas were like, how do I get to do this? And we figured out how to create scholarships and let them come do it themselves. But to get that there, finance can become a big thing. So when I love the Amazon, and when I have money, I don't mind paying $145 for a ticket to see a wonderful show, or for Hamilton to be in the balcony for $335. But it would, to really affect it and to get it there, theaters do need to say, not every show, because they do need to be profitable. Otherwise they will go down. But how about a weekend, a pay what you can weekend? And if you can't afford it, please pay the full ticket.
Yeah,
For those
absolutely.
$10.
Or even like student discounts. I don't see that as much like before COVID as I used to. But I mean, student discounts, they're what's up. Most of the shows that I've seen live were because of student discounts, because I'm like, I don't know if I can fork out, $60+ for a show, but I can spare 25. I can spare 20. I can spare 15. And then back to education, because I'm really jealous that when you were a kid, Daniel, that you went to go see shows. Theaters cut in like so many places. I have very small memories of going to see theater when I went to like a charter and private school, but when I went to public school, like it just wasn't an option.
Yeah, it used to be much more prevalent back in St. Louis at the St. Louis Repertory Theater, which I want to give a little shout out to Repertory Theater of St. Louis. They do what's called a creature feature, and every Wednesday it's just filled with kids. Every Wednesday at, I think, like 11 or 12, I can't even remember because I was half asleep during my work study. But it's just for kids coming in. They do every week, every Wednesday that the show's running. In those middle weeks, and from opening and closing. And I think that's so important, and it's accessibility. And we have said on this show before, theater is an elite sport. And to be competitive as an actor in the professional realm, you've had to take in dance for years, voice for years, and acting for years. And it is expensive. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be, because we are worth it. All of us here sitting in this room and watching, all of you out there, we are worth that. Our talents, our time, our energy, it is worth that money. But not everybody has that, and it needs to be accessible to everyone, and not just to view, which I feel very strongly that it needs to be accessible to be viewed, to experience as an audience member these wonderful shows. From Kentwood Players. Yes. From Kentwood Players to the touring production of Hamilton, and everything in between, yes. But also to be involved, either backstage as you're speaking about Glory, or on stage. It needs to be accessible to everybody, and we have to make that more accessible. And that starts with us. It starts with us here on this call. It starts with us watching and us fighting for that within our own theaters and wherever we work, for sure.
Kind of back to the topic of like things about race and media that have impacted you. I also want to talk about how sometimes you have to watch things that are going to make you uncomfortable and scare you. Like I had to watch 12 Years a Slave for a class, and let me tell you, I did not want to watch that movie. I had no intent of sitting and watching 12 Years a Slave, but when I did, and when I cried through the entire movie, I was like, I will never ever forget or take for granted of the people who were here before me, who had to go through this. As I'm sitting here in my class in a very, very, very different America than they experienced. Like, I will never not appreciate what these people went through, and the people who are after them, like the MLKs, Malcolm X's, to get where I am today. And I think sometimes we need to scare ourselves a little bit, get that reality check, because I really needed it, because I've avoided that movie, oh my God, since it came out, and I'm the biggest Lupita Nyong'o fan, and I haven't seen that movie until I had to watch for a class. And I was like, sometimes we need to shake ourselves up a little bit. We need to get out of our bubble sometimes and remember what things used to be like. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That's actually my tonight movie. I have also been avoiding it. I know it is going to be very difficult to watch.
It's fantastic. It is a hard watch.
I know. I know. I know. But it is. But I appreciate what you're saying, that even when it's hard and even when we're not, I just want to laugh or I want to see a comedy. Like sometimes we need to see the things that make us uncomfortable. Again, in this conversation I just had, I said, I know this is an uncomfortable conversation because we don't want to acknowledge that we may have been complicit in racism or white supremacy or misogyny or homophobia or whatever the thing is. But we may have been. And so we have to become aware.
Like my thing with that is that I went through the whole, if I was alive, this would have been me. And a lot of white people don't get this. That's what people don't get. That's why I'm very much like, when people are like, let's go back to like the 30s. I'm like, no, because it's like my quality of life is non-existent.
Yeah.
So watching 12 Years a Slave, I'm like, this could have been me. This is my family. Like this is. And especially because I'm first generation American, my family's from Africa. So it's like, this literally. Yeah.
And probably ancestor. So you bring up a really interesting conversation. I know we need to go because we're at time, but I want to just bring this up really quickly because here is the reverse side of using our talents, which is because when you said, let's go back to the 30s or the 20s, because I love the 1920s as far as fashion goes. I love the turn of the century as far as fashion goes. But if you're watching Bridgerton and like thank heavens for Shondaland and all of the stuff that she's producing, but if you have not seen Bridgerton, please just like finish this episode and then go watch that immediately. It is excellent. But there's this one scene where they're undoing a corset, which I love corsets. I have 90. They're undoing a corset and there are scabs and red on her back. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so true. That would have happened because right now I do all this stuff. I've got all these nice moisturizers and creams and t-shirts and things and I also don't have to wear it for 12 hours a day. I wear it for like 4 hours and then I complain and then I loosen it. Right. And then I like take it off and I'm like, oh my gosh. Right. But they had to wear it for like all day long. And so anyway, that's just another like thing we don't think about because, and this is where I'm going with this, Hollywood romanticizes everything. So if we're thinking about the 20s wouldn't be good for many people, let's be real here, which is where we are right now. The wealth gap is so huge. We're like on the borderline of another Great Depression, right? We're already feeling, you drive down most streets in any state and see an enormous homeless population. And there are people that were working hard and have lost their jobs due to all kinds of different things, automation, pandemic, whatever. This is something we're dealing with now, but Hollywood romanticizes a lot of these time periods. So how do we find that balance between using our art to entertain, lift up? We want to be we want the fantasy as well, but we also need the truth. How do we find that balance? Sam, you're our film guru.
I think it's just, I think here's the thing about it is, for me personally, I see a lot of, from my experience as a gay man, I see when a movie comes out which is about the struggles of coming out and people are like, oh, it's another movie about coming out and this, that, and the other. And I think there's a couple different perspectives of there could be somebody who's young who that's their first movie they've seen, and so why deny them that experience? On the other hand of that, there are other movies for people to watch that already do exist. So why do we need another one? Let's focus on another aspect of being this kind of person and being LGBT. So I think we do need both of those stories of let's not focus on anything that's related to race or disability or being LGBT or being a woman or anything like that, because we do need those uplifting stories. But then I think they can coexist. I don't think we need to just say, well, we don't need any of this or we don't need any of that. I think we need both. You know what I mean?
And I think
no, go ahead.
Oh, I think it's important, just because since you brought that up, it's really about the writing and how do you make that blend. Love, Simon, just using off of Sam's, is a great example. It is a coming out story, but it doesn't. It feels more like just a regular rom-com.
Yeah.
It wasn't a tragedy. It was everyone was rooting for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and then like Happiest Season just came out, and people were like, "Oh, it's about coming out again," but it's like it's through the lens of a cheesy holiday comedy movie. So I think that's a part where you can have both, where it's about the real things that people go through, but it also has the uplifting. Not to spoil it or anything, but it's uplifting and it's funny, and you like the characters and all that. So
As human beings, we need both. I'm not afraid of fantasy. I love The Greatest Showman. I know that, what's his face? Oh my god, why can't I remember the main circus guy's name? Yes, P.T. Barnum was an awful person. Like, I love myself with Hugh Jackman singing. Like, the fantasy is okay. I'm not saying no one can have an imagination about the past. But what that movie did, that was really great. It was a really diverse cast. So if you want a movie based on the fantasy of the 20s, sprinkle it up with some, color in there to keep up that. For me, that really makes me go, oh, this is a fantasy movie, obviously, because if this was realistic, these people would not be congregating together like they are. But as people, so.
I love that you brought up Greatest Showman. I love that movie. I love that movie. But what was interesting is that the point of that movie was not historical accuracy of that time period. It was about being who you are, being accepted, not living for someone else, for somebody else's approval. And they nailed that. They got that message across. I feel strong. I feel like a strong woman, and I still sing all the songs.
But there was a huge argument about P.T. Barnum. I was like, he was awful. No one's saying that, he wasn't. But it's okay to have a little bit of a fantasy.
Yeah.
It's okay. Right.
Because it really wasn't even, it's his story, but it really wasn't even about him as the historical person, to be honest. That's not what the movie was about. So, yeah, absolutely. We need to wrap up. I want to thank you both for coming. And I just want to say one quick thing before we go. Melody was on here, and this started me thinking right from the beginning about when she did 12 Angry Women 2 years ago, coming up on 2 years ago. And that was an extremely diverse cast from color, age, orientation, everything. And it was not about that. It was about 12 women on a jury talking about, well, everything really. But, it starts out with them talking about a case. And it was extremely powerful, and it was a powerful use of theater. And we've had a lot of conversation about the different ways in which we can use theater. And I think the greatest thing about this is that it is about the stories that we're telling. and the message. And going even back to Greatest Showman, it is about what the actual message is that we're trying to get across. And I think that's important. And here we are, as Daniel said at the very beginning of this call, 60 years, 70 years after the Civil Rights Movement, fighting. I have to tell you, I'm watching One Night in Miami, and I'm like, are they having this conversation about this weekend? Or like, it's really crazy. But we have to keep fighting the good fight. And I want to thank all of you and all of you watching who are using your intelligence and talents to spread good messages and help fighting this fight and standing up for people. It takes all of us, and we can't stop.
Yes.
So thank you both for being on the show.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Great
Thank you, Sam.
conversation, Great discussion about this.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, I love you all, and I love you guys. And next week we have the Okita family, one of our wonderful Kentwood families. I'm really excited. So everyone join us next Sunday, 7-ish, for KP Live. Sam, it looks like you're about to say something.
Are we not having the cast?
Oh, I jumped a week.
Yeah.
I'm a bad person. I thought it was the last week of January already. It's not. We have 5 weekends in January.
Yes.
A lot.
Next weekend's the 4th weekend. And actually, I'm a big old liar. Next weekend, we're having the cast of 3 Syllables of Shame. I am so excited about this, actually. I love that title. So,
I have to admit that I watched it, and it's really fun.
oh, I'm so excited. Don't tell, no spoilers. So,
Of course not. It's really fun.
Okay.
It's really sweet too.
I'm excited. So next Sunday, we have the cast and director of 3 Syllables of Shame. And then the week after, we have the Akitas. So lots coming up on the pipe. So stay tuned. KP Live every Sunday at 7. Thank y'all. Love you. See you next week.
Thank you.